This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome back to Live Talk with Dr. B. Hill. Today we are going to look at some DNA slide, look at catecholamines. And if we have any people that are joining us today and would like to ask a question, please do use the chat in the right-hand corner of your screen. So Dr. B, take it away.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. And yes, we would absolutely love for people to ask questions. And I believe we have Dr. Smith waiting in the wings here, ready to come on, and Travis, who has been a godsend to us, who really wants to make a difference in this world. And I know that he will. He wants to help people so that they don't get hurt the way that he's been hurt. And they're going to talk about wonderful things today that are going to be great of interest to each and every one of you. Please listen carefully and ask questions because they are anxious to answer anything that you want to hear about. And if you have any particular things that you would like to have discussed, please send me a text message and I will be very happy to include it in the show. Thank you. I'm going to turn it
Thank
over
you,
to
Dr.
you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. B. Dr. B, how are you feeling today?
I'm beginning to feel better. Thank you very much for asking.
I know you had a little cough yesterday, and in these
Oh
days of
yeah.
COVID, we always worry about any little cough. So I'm glad you're feeling better. I know you've been burning the candle at both ends, and I know you have been working enormous hours in an effort to move uh, everything forward on this landscape. Travis, how are you today?
Doing good, Dr. Smith. How about yourself?
Good, good. So we have reached out to thousands and thousands of offices, and uh, we can assume that some people who have never heard of us and have no idea what we're about are now going to be joining us and taking a look at who we are and what we have to say. So, Travis, I thought what we do is real quickly, just as an introduction for people, is look at the DNA slide that we look at quite a bit, and then we'll look at the catecholamine slide that we look at quite a bit, and then I want to jump into the Dell study because I want people to realize that everything about us, we are a science oriented group. We are dedicated to the practice of science. We are dedicated to the principles of science. We follow the principles of science, and everything that we present on this show is with a scientific perspective. Speaking of which, Travis, you recognize that slide in front of you very well. That is from our IRB approved clinical trial, and in our IRB approved clinical trial, one of the aspects of the clinical trial is that the participants, many of the participants, gave a DNA sample. These were saliva samples collected at home and sent in mostly through the U.S. mail. Um, and we actually proved quite well that the U.S. mail service is excellent for the collection delivery of DNA samples. All the samples came in pretty good. And what we are looking at specifically here is the what is known as the level of methylation. Some methylation is normal. Methylation is present at birth. It's some methylation is normal, but excess methylation is a type of a toxicity. Just like anything, a little bit is okay, but too much is toxic, and that's true for the methylation also. To get into the nitty gritty, what we are looking at here is the OPRM1 gene. This is the schematic layout of the OPRM1 gene. These are how geneticists speak with each other. And then you can see as part of that OPRM1 gene, you see a region called the promoter region there in kind of a salmon colored. And then down below there, you see blue and red columns side by side. The blue columns are the DNA of the opioid naive, people who have never really taken any opioids, people who certainly they don't get sick when they attempt opioid abstinence. And then there in red, those are the opioid dependent. In other words, those are people who, for reasons that aren't really clear, are not fully clear, when these individuals attempt to stop taking the opioids, they become very, very sick. We see that sickness as a type of a neurotoxicity. There are some very strong indicators that the sickness is a dysfunction within the nervous system itself, specifically the autonomic nervous system. And everywhere where the red column is bigger than the blue column, that is an area where methylation has occurred, toxicity has occurred, a poisoning has occurred. These poisonings occurred due to repetitive opioid exposure. In other words, a person took opioids over and over. Many people experience the onset of symptoms somewhere between 2 and 3 months, some less, some more. Uh, so there may be some individual variance in the methylation. We do not understand what thresholds have to be reached in order for the methylation to result in the neurotoxicity. But Travis, your DNA is mixed in there. You were one of the participants in our IRB approved clinical trial, and I should make note that you have come forward voluntarily, because it's very important in clinical trials that participants remain anonymous, but you have come forward voluntarily, and you have done so in the effort to help others understand. And Travis, there had been a point in your life, there had been a point in this journey for you where they had labeled you as a drug addict. Is that not true?
Yes, Dr. Smith, that's correct. When I went in for help originally, they said either the first step is that you need to admit that mentally something's wrong with you, and admit that you're a drug addict. And I wasn't okay with that part. Admitting that mentally something was not right with me, it it just didn't sit well with me. I just didn't feel comfortable with that.
You were skeptical.
Well, yes and no, but it's hard to explain. But when I first got there, I just felt uncomfortable. It just to admit that mentally something was wrong with me. I didn't feel that was the case. I mean, and another thing is they were like, well, you wanted to get high, you wanted to get high, you wanted to get high, and with me, it was never about getting high. I mean, I've told you that before, and I'll tell you that again. It was always about not being sick. So there was a lot of different equations that made me choose the decision that I made, that I didn't want to go that route. But um, I just didn't feel comfortable admitting mentally something was wrong with me and that I was a drug addict, because I didn't feel that way.
And you took the DNA test, and the DNA test showed that your DNA was very different from the DNA of the opioid naive. Your DNA showed evidence of damage, poisoning within the OPRM1 gene, the gene that encodes for the main opioid receptor in the body. This is a very old receptor and is found throughout the body in multiple systems. Um, Now that you have done the DNA test and you see that your DNA has been damaged by the opioids, and we have scientific proof that is the opioids that cause this damage. Sandoval Sierra gave us a beautiful study in 2020 and showed that indeed it is the opioids that are causing this damage. Travis, now that you have the test and you see that your DNA has been damaged by the opioids, do you view yourself as an opioid addict?
No, sir, I do not. I feel like my DNA has been changed and my blood has been poisoned. And when I looked at my catecholamines and I got back my results, it really clicked. I mean, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. It all just made sense. I mean, everything just lined up. It was common sense for me. Once I saw the proof that we have and my catecholamines, I really knew what was going on. I mean, it just, like I said, it clicked in my head. It was like a light bulb that went off.
Travis, I'm almost asking you for my own knowledge. I'm trying to, as human beings, we always try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. It's a process called empathy. We always try to understand what the other person is trying to say or is feeling, or may have felt. And so, Travis, just not as a physician, but as a human being, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, and I'm trying to imagine the moment where you had the DNA evidence and you knew that you were not, never had been, and never will be an opioid addict. And I'm wondering if there's any sense of relief that comes from knowing that you are not a drug addict.
There definitely was. I mean, there was a big sense of relief because you're like, ah, this is what's been missing. But it for me, it just clicked. I was like, wow. I was like, this makes sense to me. Like, I mean, this is what I've been looking for. Basically, is what I'm saying happened to me. But yeah, there was a big sense of relief. You're right about that, Dr. Smith. I mean, there was one.
Which comes first? Obviously, if there's a big sense of relief, that I am very happy to have confirmation that I'm not a drug addict. In your case, you didn't think you were a drug addict to begin with, but you were happy to have the confirmation that you were not a drug addict. But then simultaneous in time with that is the realization these companies poisoned me.
Right.
Which is the bigger of the two? The relief that you are not a drug addict, the relief that you do not have something wrong with you mentally, or the realization that these companies poisoned your body.
It was kind of both at the same time. You're kind of like, wow, like look at this, and then you get both at the same time. For me, what happened, but after that, I got angry. After I realized when everything actually hit my brain, and it was like, okay, this is what happened, and this is what's been done to me. Then came me being angry. Like then I turned to anger pretty much, to like, all right, well now I've got to do something about this because I just wasn't okay with it. So that's why I volunteered to do this, because I want to take these people down. Like this is a wrong that needs to be right. You know what I mean? Like we've got to right this wrong. It's got to stop. There's too many people dying. There's too many people that are losing their lives, their livelihoods. I mean, it's just bad news. So we've got to get a hold on it. I mean, so that's why I actually volunteered to do this, because I want to save as many lives as possible.
Now you say anger, and that is something I can empathize with. In fact, I would go so far as to say I don't see how. And let me rephrase that. Let me start over and rephrase that. I don't know a single person in my life that would not have experienced anger given the situation that you were in. But then here's my next question. And again, Travis, I'm really trying to thank you for helping me understand, and hopefully in the process helping others understand what our neighbors and our fellow citizens and our family members are going through, because Travis, that's who you represent. You represent the neighbors. You represent the guy down the street. You represent the family member. That's who you are in this discussion as people listen to us. So, Travis, here's my next question, and thank you for helping me understand these things. Does the anger persist? Does it remain? And if it does remain, in what way does it remain? And does it lead you to be angry and short-tempered with others in your life?
Um, for me, no, I don't get short-tempered with others in my life, because that's something that I've really been working on since I've been off of opioids. Because while on them, sometimes that would happen, because you really just, for me, I didn't have any control over how I acted sometimes, especially when I was sick and I couldn't find anything. I would be in a very bad mood. Um, but yeah, what was your exact question again, Dr. Smith?
Does the anger, well, actually, what I did was unfair. I threw like three separate questions at you all at once. Let me break them down one by one. The first question was, does the anger persist? In other words, when you had the realization and the happy realization that you're not a drug addict, which
Right.
anybody would be happy to find out they're not a drug addict. Okay, that's like that's like having a negative. Well, anyway, anybody would be happy to find out that they're not a drug addict. Um,
Right. Well, for that question, my answer is yes, it persists, but in the manner of, for me anyways, it's my anger is like, okay, now I want to do something to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Like, but so it's kind of fueling my fire, so to speak. It's my anger is the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing, if that makes
Oh,
sense. Like, I'm
it
not
does.
angry as I want to hurt someone. I'm angry as I want to make sure this never happens again. And now I've got to take some steps and actually do something about it. So that's where my anger is at, as of this point, to answer your question. So it
Let
does
me take
persist, but in that form.
let me take the remaining questions and combine them into one question.
Okay.
Are you a victim?
I that's a hard question, because I never want to be I never want to be a victim. Um, uh, Now, if you want to be technical and say, are you a victim of these people that have created this drug, opioids, then I would say yes. I would say me and anyone who's been on them, and who's been through the things that I've been through, or maybe even worse. I would say yes, they're a victim, but um, I don't want to consider myself a victim. I want to consider myself a survivor, because I really feel like I'm lucky to be here. And, you know, going through the opioid problem that I went through, to be sitting here talking to you today, I feel like is a very huge privilege. It's a blessing, because, I really feel lucky to be here. And so that's the answer to that question.
That was an amazing answer, Dr. B. I don't see you on the screen right now, but I know you well enough to know you are nodding your head in affirmation. Dr. B, that was a beautiful answer. The question was, Travis, do you feel that you are a victim? And the answer was, I could, but instead I would prefer to see myself as a survivor. That's a beautiful answer.
It is a
I appreciate
beautiful
that, because
answer, and I'm
I,
very, very proud of him. So he's just been an amazing person all along, all these time.
I
I
appreciate
see your
that, Dr. B.
point there, Dr. B. Um, wow. So, Dr. B, here's a question for you. Dr. B, who appears and disappears at will. Dr. B, here's a question for you. I don't fully understand all the goals you have for these daily shows, Monday through Thursday. But irregardless of what the goals are, I am signed up and I'm on board, and I think Travis is also. But Dr. B, if one of your goals of this program is to serve as a lamplighter, a pathfinder for people to go from I am an opioid addict to I am not an opioid addict, but I'm angry that the pharmaceutical companies have done this to me, to get to where Travis is right now, not that Travis is at an endpoint, he still remains on a journey, all of us do. But Travis is clearly on a healthier pathway, and has made a transition from viewing himself as well, he never really viewed himself as a drug addict, which is a testimony to his spirit and strong will. But he did gain an awareness that he was a victim, but quickly transitioned that awareness into he willed himself into being a what he classifies as a survivor. I wonder how we can help others understand that journey and follow in that journey. And that's not my field of expertise, Dr. B.
I really feel as if people get back their self-esteem, they can go from there. And I think that they have been brought down. They have been told and told and told and told and whipped into the belief that they are a drug addict, that they don't have any self-worth, that they are the lowest of low, when it is not their fault. And it just drives me insane to think that people are taking on this label. They're taking on the blame for something that they did not do. And I want them to be tested so that they can get back their own self-esteem, let alone letting everybody else in the world know that they are not a drug addict, that they have not done anything wrong, that they have tried and tried and tried to just keep from getting sick. That's my big thing there, is I cannot stand people being labeled for things that they didn't do, and even being labeled for something they did do. I don't like labels, and I do not like the fact that people's self-esteem has been stolen from them.
I would take that a step further and say that not only their self-esteem, I would say their very identity has been stolen from them and replaced with this fairy tale concept that they're a drug addict. But I don't want to leave this. I think what Travis just said is of first of all, I think it's one of the most important things he's ever said on these shows, and he said a number of important things. But I've never understood or really looked at the importance of making the transition from a victim to a survivor. And what I heard Travis say, and I'll ask him if this is what he meant. Travis, what I heard you say was you view yourself as a survivor of what the pharmaceutical companies did.
Yes, I do, but I also, it's especially of what they have done. First and foremost, I want to make that clear. But it's also a big factor is all the people that I know that have died that are no longer here. It's just like I feel very
Okay,
lucky to
okay,
to to
they
still
didn't
be here.
survive the part where they were left alone to confront the sickness by themselves and they had to do what they had to do. They didn't survive that process.
Right. So it's both factors in one is why I feel the way that I feel. I just feel very
Opioids,
lucky. Yes, off from the opioids. I feel
opioid
lucky.
survivors.
Yeah, I
What a
feel
concept.
lucky to be here. I mean, I feel like there's sometimes I feel like I don't understand how I'm here. Like when I really look back and think and I remember, wow, that day I took that many pills. Like how am I even here?
How
And
many
and
was
this
it?
person uh at my worst uh I was still on a low dose of I think it was I can't remember, it was like oxycodone or something like that. It was 10 milligram or something, I can't remember, but I was on a low dose and my tolerance was very very high at that point. And I actually have a visitor. I need to get him out of the room. I do apologize.
Oh, you're okay.
Brayden, you gotta go. Baby, can you keep him out of here? I'm sorry about that, y'all. That was my
We've all
son.
been parents. We've all been parents.
Yeah.
We've
um
everybody on this show has raised kids. Everybody on this show, our kids are now older than yours. Trust me, we get it.
he
We
finally
get it.
found me. I think he was looking for me. He finally found me, so
He's got a little bit of you in him.
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, that persistence. Yeah. Anyway, Travis, today has just been one of the most remarkable shows for me. You're like for me, I feel like a light switch went off. Maybe and I've never entertained the concept of something called the opioid survivors, and yet I see your point. You don't view yourself as an opioid victim, okay? Because part of it is your personality. You don't want to view yourself as a victim, so you gotta put that in a different category. So you have come up with a
Right.
concept, at least in your own head and your own mind, of being an opioid survivor. What a fantastic what a fantastic angle on that. It's a great way to view it. Hats off
I
to you, man.
I think it's a healthy way to view it. Like for me anyways, it's the healthier option. Like I don't think anyone who's fighting against opioids, well, for my personal experience, me fighting against opioids, I couldn't view myself as a victim. I just couldn't. Like I couldn't pity myself. I had to. I don't know. I felt like it took fight away from from myself. Like I was fighting at that point, and I felt like it would. I don't know. It made me weak. That's what I felt like. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was pride. If I felt like it made me weak. It's just
Because
I
you
didn't
had
want
to
to.
have these pills every day.
Yeah, I was fighting against that at the time when I formed that opinion. You know what I mean? Like it, and it's just stuck with me. But I felt like it took some fight away from me if I felt like a victim. I don't know how to explain it or put it into the right words, but um I just felt like it would made me weak. It made me weak. You know,
By
if
the
I
way,
felt like that.
I want. Well, we're going to run out of time here in a few minutes, and I did want to follow up on a point you made earlier, and let you and I try to add some clarity for our listeners. You had mentioned something. You had actually used the word tolerance, and you had said something along the lines of your tolerance was high. Um, there is no current good explanation for what opioid tolerance is, or what causes it, or what does it. Uh, but Travis, you and I have talked about the fact, and you're looking at that DNA slide right there on the screen in front of you, and you can see
Uh-huh.
that the amount of damage that has been done to that gene, the OPRM1 gene, and you see that the damage is spread all up and down that gene, and you and I both know that gene makes the opioid receptor, and when you see that level of damage, how could you possibly expect to have a normal receptor? And Travis, you and I have floated around the theory that perhaps what the tolerance is from is that as the receptors are becoming more and more and more abnormal in their possibly in their appearance and certainly in their function, as they're becoming more and more abnormal, it takes a higher level of opioid in the bloodstream to have the same effect. And that just kind of, you and I would call that the common sense approach. So, Travis, going back to what you said earlier about the uh, tolerance that you were experiencing, is it possible that that tolerance was what was happening to you as your receptors were becoming changed, were becoming different, were becoming maladaptive, we're becoming unable to function normally? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, Dr. Smith.
And so for the people to be able to survive these incredibly high doses of opioid, I mean, there are people that literally take 50 pills a day. That's not an unheard of number. Okay, there are people that literally take 50 opioid tablets a day because their tolerance has gotten so high. I believe as their receptors have gotten so abnormal, and then eventually the cost of the pills get to the point to where you turn to heroin or fentanyl. Plus, particularly fentanyl has a higher affinity, so you're able actually to have the effect on the receptor with the fentanyl that you no longer could get with the oxycodone. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there for our listeners to at least understand what our thoughts were on tolerance. Does that make sense?
Yes, Dr. Smith. That makes sense.
Okay. Uh, I had wanted to jump into the catecholamine slide today, and then I wanted to get to the Dell study today. I do believe we are going to run out of time, and I'm not upset by the fact that we're going to run out of time because, Travis, I don't know about our listeners, but I think Dr. B and myself would both say that we really got something out of this show today, this session today, and what you said to both Dr. B and myself was for us an eye-opening experience, and an experience that Travis, only someone like yourself who has gone through it and, as you now say, survived through it could bring that type of perspective to the discussion. And Dr. B, I think it just drives home the point that we've
Yes.
got to keep Travis on this show.
Yes, definitely. Travis has been there, has done it, has felt it. Travis has an understanding of it that anybody else who has been through it has it. We don't have it. All we're trying to do is to help. Travis can explain it to people better because he's been there and done it. And he is a survivor. He is
You,
definitely a survivor.
I
And
think
he has
anybody.
the,
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, Dr. B.
that's okay. He has the capability and the drive to want to help people. He's that kind of a person. It's coming from his heart. It's not coming from any place else. He
Well, it's
contacted
helping
us
me.
and said, I'd like to help.
It's helping me, and I hope it's helping others.
There goes our bell.
There's a bell.
Well,
All
thank
right,
you so much
Chrissy.
for joining us today. We really appreciate every input that you have that are able to open up our eyes to a lot more to what we couldn't see, And so I do want to say thank you very much. And thank you for joining in and Live Talk with Dr. B every Monday through Thursday, 12:30 to 1. Thank you all. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.